And now we open the stage for our next panel discussion, European Space Competitiveness and Readiness, a make or break decade ahead. And to moderate, no doubt, what will be a lively discussion, I'd like to invite on stage news correspondent and presenter Jack Parrock. Jack, all yours.
Thank you so much. Okay, good morning everyone. My name is Jack Parrock. As said, I'm a Brussels-based news correspondent and presenter, delighted to have been asked to moderate this next panel. Now, I'm going to invite all of our speakers up onto the stage, and I'll introduce them as they come. The first being Timo Pesonen, who's the Director General in DG DEFIS of the European Commission. I also have Josef Aschbacher. Please start joining me. Josef Aschbacher, the Director General of the European Space Agency. Rodrigo da Costa, the Executive Director of the EU's Agency for the Space Programme. Please give them a round of applause as they come as well, yeah. I have Hervé Deret, who is the CEO of Thales Alenia Space, Marco Fuchs, the President of ASD Eurospace. One along, if you don't mind. Just one seat down. Yeah, thank you. Marco Fuchs, who I said, Chief Executive Officer of OHB, somewhere here, hopefully. I have Jesus Serrano, the CEO of GMV. Jean-Marie Bettemere, who is the Executive Vice President for Space at Safran Electronics and Defense, and the CEO of Safran Data Systems. And yeah, keep applauding. I also have Massimo Claudio Comparini, who is the Managing Director for the Space Division at Leonardo. And last but not least, Alain Fauré, who is the Head of Space Systems at Airbus Defence and Space. A lot of people on the stage. We are going to get into as much as we can over the next just over an hour or so. There's a lot to talk about. We've heard some big statements here on the stage already today, partly also from some of our panelists. We are entering a decisive phase. I like the title of our panel. Sometimes when events put on panels like this, they put a question mark. You make or break decade ahead, question mark? No, this time we're going for this. This is a make or break decade ahead. Specifically, I think a lot of pressure, a lot of questions after the ministerial that happened in Bremen, and also the discussions around the MFF for the 2028 to 2034 period. That is a real key budgetary shift, I think, for the space sector. Timo, I'm going to start with you. How are we shaping things in the European space industry to make sure it stays healthy for the next decade?
Thanks a lot, Jack, and glad to be back at the space conference. 18-year-old, so full age, adult, driving license, so maybe drive to the moon, boots on the ground. So all the volunteers sign up. More seriously, it's really, the title is very telling, and if we take it seriously, as we should, we have a hell of a lot of work to do ahead of us, all of us. I make few points, leave time for discussion. Some years back, I was in the same forum, but on Palais des Monde, and I coined our objectives around 3 C's. First, we need to consolidate our space program. We need to keep Galileo robust, further develop Copernicus, and come with the GovSatcom at that time proposal. Second C was competitiveness. We can't continue as we have been doing. We need to race to the top. I've always said it's not enough that we are the second in the world or third or fourth. We have to be the best. And this, I really admire ambition of my friend Josef, who's really steering ESA as a global leader in several fields. You already told about, how ESA is involved on the, let's say, key American flagships. So European technology, the ESA engineering skills. And then the third one was communication, meaning that we have to be better explain to our citizens where all these billions go and tens of billions of taxpayers' money. And I think that all these three are still very relevant. These points I made before the war, before the 24th of February. the morning, winter morning, which we all remember, when the aggressor crossed the border of a sovereign, independent European nation on the 21st century. It was unbelievable. Ukrainian, the brave people, they stopped them, but the war continues. The fourth anniversary is approaching. So this has been a dramatic change to our geopolitical situation in Europe, and that's why, of course, also in our space program, we have reacted to this with IRIS², the secure connectivity. GovSatcom I already mentioned. It's now, as Commissioner said, it's up and running. IRIS² is not in a distant future, it is in the making. Katrin, her team, together with the consortia, with ESA expertise and USPA, are making 24/7 contributions that it will happen. And as Commissioner advocates, we need to make it kind of incremental development. That we don't launch a big programs years ahead or decades. So we need to make concrete progress on all the time and a kind of realistic but ambitious benchmarks how to get there. And of course, Earth observation, governmental service, and the others are in the making. But of course, the time is of essence. So we need to be able to pull together the national skills and constellations, European industry, the big and the small, the primes and the newcomers, in the best possible way. And here I would call a kind of a different approach. I'm not calling for any whatever task forces or working groups or nothing like that, governance, but some kind of a permanent dialogue between the European industrial players, because this space conference is the annual get-together, so that these guys, ladies, would have a kind of a constant share of operationally where we can go in what time frame. Who can do what faster than the other one? How can we pull together resources? And of course, where does the money come from? And in what time frame? And Marco rightly, in his opening remarks, advocated the need for continuing investments on R&D. I fully agree with that. And that's where we have an ambitious approach for our next MFF proposal. I'm very happy that Commissioner Shakarieva was here, who's in charge of research and development and Horizon Europe program. So there we really have to push, not to forget, where does these new innovations come from? But we have to make it faster. We don't have luxury of wait until the end of the next MFF or end of the European Defence Fund or the prototype or this or that. We have to be faster, really seriously. That's what I wanted to say.
So Josef Aschbacher, we hear the pressure, we hear the urgency. How does this moment get grasped? How do we make sure that that is translated into the things that Timo's outlining that we want to do?
Well, thank you, Jack. And I think Timo said it very nicely. In the past, we had a lot of time, but no money. And now we have a lot of money, but no time. Okay, if I say a lot of money, it's all relative, but we still need, of course, to increase. But time has become a driving factor, a driving element. And if I just look a bit into the last few months or weeks, what happens? I mean, it is going so fast, and I think certainly everyone in this room here, but also in the political decision-making circles, I think everyone realizes that the time of talking is over. We have to take action. We have to really change gear, literally, and change quite significantly how we work and what we do. And that means transforming ourselves. I'm putting a very strong transformation process within ESA, not only in motion, it's already running since almost 2 years. I will continue doing so. The interactions with industry, the interactions with our member states is crucial, and we have delivered a lot of successes, so you have to be a bit careful not to break something that works pretty well, but we have to really accelerate and be faster. I think one proof of it that we are in the midst of this transformation is the number of satellites we launched last year. It was 46, I already mentioned, absolute record, but 26 of those have been new space missions. That means 20 of them are the classical ones, Sentinels, Galileo missions, also communication missions, space science, and so on. But so the really complex, difficult, most sophisticated ones, the best in the world. But 26 of those, so more than half, have been new space missions. Still complex and sophisticated, but much smaller, much faster. And I think this is happening across the board. So this is what we need to continue doing. Make or break, yes, it is. We are in a make or break situation. And let me formulate it a bit more drastic. If we are not managing to transform our ecosystem, be faster, also invest more funds at the end of the day. If you don't invest the funds, you're not, you can be as clever and as beautiful as you want, but you will not succeed. Of course, we need funds, but it's really I would say, a combination of changing innovation, changing fragmentation, changing or being faster, being more dynamic and agile, and the funding. If we are not doing it, the same will happen in space as happened in IT to us in Europe, that we have been clever 20 years ago, 15 years ago, the same intellectual property rights, the same inventions and innovations at European level as compared to America or Japan. But today we have not, we have maybe one or two large companies in IT which are successful, but the majority, obviously, and the big ones are not in Europe. And there we have failed to convert intellectual intelligence into commercial successes. And I think in space we're in a similar way today, where we have the excellence still. We are among the world's best. But if we are not managing to convert this drastically into some of the also commercial successes, we will be pushed out of the market. We will not lead. And this is, for me, a very make or break situation. I think we are on a good path. We really, all the alignments we have had so far, including these ministerial, are pointing in the right direction. But we need even more pressure, even faster, and also even more money.
Yeah, you can even sense it here this morning that you're not the only person feeling that, though. That is sort of broadly the sentiment. Rodrigo, let's come to you. We heard already from Timo the buy-in of citizens. What are you guys doing at USPA? Can you talk us through a little bit about how the work that's being done actually can be sort of sold to citizens?
Absolutely. So also, good morning from my side. It's a pleasure to be here at the adult space conference, 18 years old, as Timo said. Quite a lot. I mean, EU Space is impacting citizens in many different ways. I have to say that together, as a team delivering on this, we look back to a very successful 2025. 2025 was a very important year. Not only we continue providing data and services in a very robust manner, the Galileo services out there, the EGNOS services, search and rescue. We also have new things. Commissioner has mentioned in his introductory speech, with the open service navigation message authentication, we are adding an extra layer of resilience to Galileo. And this is helping moving the Union further in providing services to communities that need assured navigation. But there is more than that. We see, of course, the impact and the work that has been done on GovSatcom. A bit more than a week ago, we started operating the GovSatcom Hub. The GovSatcom Hub is a great tool because it is the first way that at Union level we will be providing these type of services to users that then will expand their use cases and very soon will not only use the pooling and sharing capability of GovSatcom, but will also enter into connecting to what will become IRIS². So I think this path of growth and this path of continuous impact is very important. Certainly today, EU Space is impacting the life of citizens in many different ways, the general public, but also many different sectors that are already benefiting, be it from Galileo, from Copernicus, now from GovSatcom, soon from IRIS². But it is also benefiting particular communities. And coming to the Make It or Break, I want to put a special highlight in the community, in what I would call the security user community. These are users in the member states, which can be, of course, the civil security, talking about civil protection, fire brigade, police forces, but also when we look at the military domain and how the military can use EU space data in order to have their own missions for their own capacity. Now, 2026 will be a challenging year. It is a good moment. I've said it, I think, last year here in this stage. It is a good time to work for space in Europe. There is ambition. We see it in the very successful, by the way, congratulations, Josef and the team, the very successful ESA ministerial conference. We see in the big ambition that we have and that the Commission has put on the table for EU space. But as the actors, and of course we will hear now from industry, we have to deliver on that ambition. 2026 is also a year of delivery. We will bring forward our public regulated service of Galileo, to give you an example, but other things will happen. We closed last year with a launch. We want to close this year with yet another Galileo launch. So there is a lot of work that is done, of course, by the institutions, but in particular by industry, by all the stakeholders that work together to make EU space a reality. Thank you.
2026, the year of delivery. This is one of the priorities, clearly. And as said, one of the things that we do with this panel is we use it to hear a lot from industry. It's a bit of a bumper panel, but we're going to get as much information as we can here on the main stage this morning to launch the conference. So Hervé Deré, talk to us a little bit about what this year has taught you guys and what you're using to make sure you're avoiding any traps, make sure that this year of delivery is good for your company, essentially.
Yeah, thank you. And I think indeed the industry is well represented this year with a number of speakers. So I think for about 3 years now, we have all identified a strategic imperative of increasing and strengthening and, let's say, having a more sovereign and fully sovereign European space. And at that time, let's say the big drivers were on one side, the fact that we are observing some disruptions in the launchers, in telecom, and also starting in observation and navigation, as well as a very strong need of space for defense. The news of last year are basically confirming that imperative need. First, looking at on one side, the relationship between Europe and US. Obviously, the stronger tensions with the US have had impact on space, with basically NASA backing off of some, let's say, long-term programs that were built together in the science domain and potentially in the exploration domain, as well as new steps that have been taken by SpaceX, the space giant in the US, not only now covering launchers, broadband internet, but also looking at mobile connectivity and starting to compete with directly with, let's say, terrestrial mobile operators. So the good news is that there is a strong acknowledgement of this, let's say, imperative needs for sovereignty. I think the ministerial is a very strong and positive sign from our governments, and hopefully the upcoming MFF will confirm that also. We see also through ReArm Europe and the tools that have been put in place, EDIP, SAFE, also very positive news. But now, obviously, it's very clear time for execution, for moving quickly into our programs. And a number of countries, let's say, set as a deadline or as a first milestone, 2029. In 2029, we need to be ready to fill a certain number of capability gaps. And what we are talking about for closing these capacity gaps is mostly large-scale constellations in a number of domains. And here I see 3 potential pitfalls in trying to reach this deadline. First pitfall would be to not take benefit of the European scale in terms of engineering and industry, and basically working on pure national programs and not taking benefit of that scale. Second pitfall, it would be to raise, or let's say to have, let's say, an ambition in terms of performance and technology that would put us as the second league. You were talking, in fact, of a quantum leap, Joseph. I think indeed we need to maintain let's say, a level which is the state-of-the-art level. And third risk and third pitfall would be to basically decide to rely on non-European technology, meaning basically being fully dependent, and therefore this would be completely contradictory with our sovereign objective. So how to cope with these different, let's say, contradictory requirements? My advice would be to maintain European programs at European level, relying on European technologies, but in order to meet the short deadlines, have an iterative approach. Obviously, the first iteration won't reach, let's say, the performance level that we want to reach, but we will get there on a step-by-step basis. And here, obviously, industry has a role to play. We need to be agile. We need to be competitive. And we need to provide industrial scale. And at Thales Alenia Space, we do that. We have done our homework in improving the competitiveness, and this has proven to be effective because we won a number of commercial contracts last year. And we are also working on, let's say, industrial scale. We have built up a new Space Smart factory in Rome that is totally adapted to this kind of requirements.
Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, Marco Fuchs, I'm going to come down to you. Perhaps you can take us inside the sort of brain of OHB a little bit, and what this year has meant for you and how you want to develop your company in the wake of what's happened.
Well, yes, thanks, Jack, yes. Well, of course, 2025 was very successful in budgets. I mean, of course, ESA, we talked about it many times. Germany made big announcements for their investment into military space. I think we're well underway also for the next framework at European Union. But yes, there is a mismatch in the sense of saying now the money is there and how can we speed up implementation? Because you cannot speed up implementation just by having the money, obviously. So something needs to change. And we have a few contradictions, as Hervé said. We do have de facto much more institutional demand in Europe, and still we have a consolidation in industry. So there's something contradictory, I would say, very carefully saying. We have a number of new players that are entering the market from the lower end of the size of satellites, but most of these programs that we have now being envisioned and financed are very high-performing programs. We cannot say, well, let's maybe do it with a very, let's say, very small satellites. I mean, if you, at the end, the physics are the physics. So if you have a telco constellation and you have certain requirements, you need to have certain, I don't know, power and thermal conditions and everything. So you cannot just say, well, I'm doing thousands of micro satellites, and then that's going to be the solution. You see with SpaceX, you see that the satellites are getting bigger and bigger every generation, much more powerful every generation. So many contradictions. I think from an industry perspective, it's important to stay focused on your own game. I mean, we need to build stuff. We need to develop stuff. We need to make sure that it works. And yes, it's an awkward situation to see all these opportunities left and right, and sometimes you think, maybe we should do this and maybe we should do that. No, you gotta stay on what you are committed or contracted to do. And yes, the room is getting more full. There are more companies, there are more players, there are people coming that were not there 2 years ago. We have to live with this. We are a booming industry, so that's good. It's good if we have more supply, because the reality is we cannot deliver the demand from the traditional industry anyway. If you look at the output, I mean, Germany is a good example. I mean, the whole German industry in space, in BDLI, our association, has about 3 billion turnover per year. Now the military comes and wants to spend 35 billion in 5 years, so that's 7 billion per year. So an industry in Germany that is doing 3 billion should do 10 billion if it's only domestic. That's going to work. So what does it mean? Well, there will be different solutions to this, but it's not going to work that easily. So, I mean, to make it short, it's a big opportunity for us. Obviously, unfortunate geopolitical developments have caused this, the war, the fallout with the United States. I mean, this is obviously a different world we're living in. It will, I believe, not go back to where it was, and it's a one-time opportunity for the space industry. But I think what we need to keep in mind is that the The implementation is still complex, it's difficult, we have to invest, we have to also tolerate on the customer side that not everything goes smooth. Sometimes you have delays, and we need to we need to learn from the examples that others do. The Americans are investing much more since a very long time, and we cannot catch up just in a year or two. No, of course not. They are doing this since 2 decades.
Yeah.
So long story short, I guess it's an opportunity for everybody, but it's also, I mean, I see many actors being kind of a little bit nervous to see how, I don't want to miss out now on this big wave. Yes, that's a feeling I guess all of us on the industrial side have. We don't want to miss out this big opportunity, but at the end of the day, we have to deliver, and it will come to the point that only, like in every industry, only customer satisfaction because of delivery really makes a difference. So I think it's, I mean, looking at OHP for 2026, it's a year of full opportunities, but I'm sure that if I go home and sit in internal meetings, same kind of discussions like always. Not enough people here, not enough resources there, not enough calendar there, blah, blah, blah. So life is not changing. I mean, it's better to live in a boom time, but it doesn't make everything easy.
Yeah, got to hear the sound of the boom as well. Jesus Serrano, let's come down to you. Talk to us a bit about GMV, and perhaps you can just sort of give us a window into how this improved coherence between the space agency, between EU investments, could improve the situation for a company like yours. How are you viewing what's happening at the moment?
Well, thank you, thank you, Jack. GMV started as working for ISA, and we have worked in the institutional market, and we have moved to the commercial sector. In any case, we have to recognize that the institutional sector is the main, is the fundamental driver for the space sector, according to Eurospace figures. More than 75% of the total sales of the industry are coming from public customers, and therefore it is very important the institutional sector as driver for the market, and therefore shaping the market, the size, the structure of the market, and also having a leading role in development of technologies, capabilities, and therefore creating the competitiveness of the market. For this institutional sector, this has been highlighted by Josef in the keynotes and also by Marco, the relevance of the fragmentation of the market, which have been addressed by Draghi, Letta, and Easton reports, and especially by Draghi. The fragmentation of the market is harming the competitiveness at the European level. Therefore, from our point of view, we have to work hard in trying to aggregate the demand, trying to foster the competitiveness of Europe. And we have two very good examples in the history: the European Space Agency, with its long track record, with successful state-of-the-art and challenging missions, and which have been also creating and generating a very strong competitiveness industry in all member states. And second, the European program with state-of-the-art, also a world-class space infrastructure, who have consolidated the industry. It is therefore important that from the ISA Ministerial Conference, with the relevant priorities set, and eventually the significant budget for space in the next MFF, which might be consolidated, but it is important to do so in order to have for the future, for the next decade, challenging and ambitious roadmaps from ISA, from the European Commission and USPA, in order to foster the competitiveness of Europe and to work for the reinforcement of Europe and the European Union. So from summary, from our point of view, the more ambitious ISA and the European Commission are, the greater the competitiveness and the reinforcement of Europe.
Thank you so much. I'll come down to you, Jean-Marie. Take us into Safran at the moment. Explain to us from the perspective of an equipment supplier, are we moving from political ambition to executable scale? What's happening in your company?
Thank you, Jack. I remember 4 years ago on the same stage, we were desperately looking at having a vision at the European level. We have it now. And I think the introduction of Timo, Josef, sounds like good music to our ear. We have the money now, we have the vision, and it's ours to make it a reality. In this respect, a lot of enthusiasm, and what is in front of us? I think it's designing, launching, operating, replenishing, evolving large space infrastructure, which are going to be key for our future. And when we see where we come from, a very technology-driven countries with very unique, exquisite mission, we have to totally reinvent ourselves. To be good at delivering the most advanced feature, and I can't agree more when Joseph is talking about quantum leap innovation. It's really where we need to shift gear. If we'd like to be the first in the world, we need to push our engineers, our academic network and so on, to be the best. And then it's all about operating large volumes of action of satellites. And then we call that in Safran, it's industry, it's on time, on cost, on quality. It is the essence of what we need to do now. So our vision in Safran is really extrapolated by what is happening in the aeronautics sector. We believe there are some players who need to concentrate on technology, providing this extremely appealing technology to all others to the ecosystem. And we believe in this kind of model. What we are doing at the moment is very encouraging when we have the feedback of all our customers. And I think we need to keep in mind that being good at technology and be ready to manufacture, to produce this technology at appealing cost, you need a lot of money to do that. You need a hell of money. And in this respect, we start, the actual landscape is very fragmented for the reason that we know. And I think we need to organize ourselves to fund this, to support this kind of new journey. In this respect, the Competitiveness Fund will be essential to make sure that our key technology leaders will get the right support. Just to illustrate, in Safran, we believe that some of our technologies are really great. The atomic clocks, optical, and also electric propulsion. Electric propulsion, just to give you and share some insight, I think it's a few hundreds of million euro injected into that. So we need, if we need the private sector is ready to invest, we need this visibility. That's going to be very key for the future, to see the demand, confirm, and see the long-lasting initiative to support this technological journey.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the outline. I'll come down to you, Massimo. Talk us through a little bit of how you think we should be conceiving of new services, especially in the space industry, in the wake of the Space Agency's ministerial? And what are you doing at Leonardo to make that sort of connection between space and digital?
Thank you, and good morning. I mean, it's of course the 8 or 9 speakers. It's difficult to add something, but let's take the angle that you highlight. I mean, at the end, what we are discussing in this conference, space infrastructure, space services, but what is for? It's for to deliver information, to transmit information, huge amount and exponential growing amount of data through our low latency constellation as well as geostationary satellite, or to generate a huge amount of data, talk about the geospatial domain. And this concept of data is also important for other domains. It's been mentioned, the back to the moon. I'm convinced that, let's say, the connectivity between the Earth and the lunar system is part of our future. Not only to have the in situ resources utilization on the moon, but also for security of the Earth. So at the end, we are discussing how to manage and to transmit data and how to derive information. And of course, may we imagine all of that without satellite or without space infrastructure? No. But at the same time, is this business still just satellite-centric? No. We need to think about the system. We need to think about, in a kind of holistic way, what the implication of onboard technologies will give to a service, and which kind of technologies we need to mature to think new services. And I think this is let's say, an incredible, powerful combination if we are able to take that. Why I say that, and because what we try to do. Today, in our geospatial services, all the data crunching are through supercomputing, our Da Vinci 1, which is placed in Genoa, high power computing, which is able to give us the responses 50, 60, or 100 times faster crunching geospatial data. This is essential for disaster recovery. This is essential for monitoring of infrastructures. And of course, it is and it will be more and more essential for defense and security. But it's not enough. So we need to move this high power computing or the power computing on board of the space layer to be faster, to have the better capacity. And of course, if I think a new services which is taking care of processing, not only on ground, but also on board, that's a huge impact how build a satellite, how to mature technologies. At the same time, it's not just a question of revisit time, for instance, in the Earth observation. It's also a question of latency. So how can I reduce the latency, regardless of the sensing? Okay, I need to have a network space to space, and I need to have a laser communication, inter-satellite link, some of the technologies that Jean-Marie mentioned before. And of course, we need to mature those technologies to inject in the mission with a reasonable industrial risk and to avoid that industry is risk adverse. All of that combined, as Marco said, with a step up of capacity, which is we never had at this speed and in so short time. So I think it's a big challenge, and that's, you ask me, okay, what we are doing? We push, for instance, an Earth observation constellation, $500 million investment. We signed the first contract with TAS, of course, inside the Space Alliance. We signed the first contract with Telespazio for optical ground station. To deliver, Josef knows very well, to deliver fast, starting from hand 27, early 28, low latency what through inter-satellite link across the orbital planes, geospatial data to inject in what will be ERS, what will be OGS, what will be the full ecosystem connecting with the transport layer, just an example with IRIS². So I think that to respond to your question, if we imagine new services, we have new technologies. We need to have on board of the next generation satellite, small or big, those technologies mature enough to avoid the risk adverse from industry and to be fast.
Yeah.
And of course, at the end of the decade, it's a kind of turning point. I'm curious to see the progress that we will be able to show in this conference in the coming 2 or 3 years before the end of the decade.
Yeah. It is, like you say, it's a nice barometer that we see every year. Alain Fauré, let's come down to you. Talk to us about Airbus, the thinking, any shifts that have happened, and what you're planning to do, especially, again, in the wake of that ministerial conference, which seems like something of a turning point in the industry.
So first, being the last one, I have nothing clever to add. But more seriously, yes, indeed, 2025 was a pivotal year and a rather successful year. So thank you, Joseph, for the success of the Semin. We had as well in 25 very important launches, thanks to Ariane 6 for some of them, and as well Vega C. In Airbus, we launched 10 complex satellites. 10 complex satellites, and 2/3 of them were for governmental grade application, and 1/3 for climate monitoring as biomass or METOP-SG. We saw a traction in defense starting in 25, some significant order in our home country for observation satellite, and an important order as well for Eutelsat OneWeb, where Airbus has been selected to produce 440 satellites. What is interesting is the fact that we have decided to produce this satellite in Europe. The previous generation were produced in the US, so we have decided to put the production in Europe to be a scale and for the sovereignty purpose. So for Airbus and the competitiveness, the global competitiveness of the industry, first, yes, we are working on the optimization of the cost base. We are promoting operational excellence. We continue to invest, and we are investing on R&D. We announced that we have decided to invest on the new Pléiades Neo called Pléiades Neo Next to provide service and image, high-resolution image to the various customers, public or private one. It's an important investment decided by Airbus. In addition to that, what do we need to be competitive in Europe and to be successful? First, for sure, as already said, we need the budget and the continuity between the Semin and the future MFF is key for this one. Budget to be at scale and to be able to promote dual-use technology. And after that, for the readiness, I think we need really to push for incremental approach, incremental step based on mature technology in order to ensure continuity of the service and to be able to deliver faster. For sure, we need quantum leap new technology, but sometimes to propose and to prepare them out of cycle is what we did in the aeronautic industry to prepare to have incremental step and to prepare as well the new technology. And I think with that we can ensure the readiness for 2029, thinking about the user, the continuity of service. So yes, the scale is important, the volume is important, the harmonization of the demand, the harmonization of the supply, and second, the incremental step.
No, thank you. Really great to hear from everyone. Thanks for bringing those insights. Let's get a bit more into this. You hear these kind of things coming from industry, Timo. What are you doing with sort of the EU policy possibilities to try and adapt in the right way to make this the sort of the make decade rather than the break decade. I mean, this also, I think I have to pick up on this point of boots on the moon. Is this kind of the EU policy now? Is this the priority? Or is it more of a sort of sign of how strident you're trying to be in the Commission?
Well, I mean, it's not in our remit. I mean, it's more for ESA and of course for the member states, as the French minister also said. So I expect more, let's say, concrete discussion in the Space Summit in France in summer. I mean, in the Commission, I mean, we have limited resources to get into this, but of course, I mean, can give political support and work together with ESA. But on the other, if I a little bit on the space defense side, I mean, because clearly, I mean, what we are doing here, I mean, now is that what we are pulling together resources to strengthen our defense industrial base and capabilities and support Ukraine. 150 billion safe loans for member states are in the making, in the pipeline, day by day. 60 billion for the loan instrument for Ukraine. So these are remarkable top-up of what we have had earlier. But in parallel, we continue implementing the defense fund and the defense industrial program, where we have identified so-called flagships or let's say priority projects, I mean, whatever your key capability domains, where the space shield is one of them. And clearly there, I mean, we need to find a proper balance between respecting the national sovereignty of the member states, leaving the role for the national space commands, which belongs to them, and then carefully see what value added a European initiatives can bring. And there I think we can pull together different elements on different, let's say, national existing or in the making of, let's say, space defense instruments or, let's say, elements, and then find, let's say, the really European value added. So I'm trying to advocate that, you know, we are not stepping on the toes of the member states, definitely not, but we want to be there with a European value added. Of course, we have Galileo and Copernicus and IRIS Square in the making, like a big flagship projects. And of course, we want to see also on the defense side that what can we learn from these successful space big projects, European-wide projects. So what could be then, let's say, to be imitated in the field of defense when we talk about air defense, air shield, or the space defense shield. So this is something where, well, of course, the discussion will continue. And I'm eager to listen to the industry.
Joseph,
just sorry to add,
please, yeah.
just one thing on Ukraine. I really appreciate our industry being really, let's say, forward-looking to work with Ukraine, to support Ukraine in the field of space also. There are many things happening in support Ukraine in their efforts to protect their sovereignty and the lives of their citizens. And I think this is very important that it continues and that we are looking for opportunities investing in Ukraine and with Ukrainian companies together to make them stronger, because they will become a member of the European Union sooner than later.
Josef, please. Josef Aschbacher, I'll come down to you. Talk to me about your sort of vision going forward to sort of address the challenges. You obviously have the power in the space agency, but if you could tweak everything, what would it look like?
Well, the power is always with the member states and my decision makers, just to be very clear. But I think it is helpful to give a direction and then hopefully find alignment. But I think it was said many times, the last ministerial was a huge success, but let me also remind everyone that a year earlier, that means the end of 24, we have some member states have still been asking for a ministerial at the order of 14, 15 billion, a mini CM or Civilia Plus ministerial as it was called. But I think it was important to insist that space is so fundamental, so important that we cannot afford to have a small funding at the ESA ministerial, that we need to be bold, that we need security and defense as a driver, in addition, obviously, to inspiration, the economic growth, and so on. So I think we should not forget this, that I think politicians have really recognized the strategic value and the importance of space for society, and I think this shift has happened, and this is good. The vision for the future, of course, number one is now to really implement fast and differently, and I mentioned the transformation process, including disruptive technologies, quantum leaps in technology, otherwise we're never catching up. But if you look a bit further, and I always compare Europe with the rest of the world, obviously China and the United States are our benchmarks in many aspects. What's happening? In a very few days, Artemis will fly to the moon with the European Service Module, by the way. Also, China is preparing to land astronauts on the moon, just as the United States are doing. India is developing a human spaceflight capability, and Europe is not. And this, for me, is very disturbing, that Europe, as a high technology nation with some of the best talents and expertise and industries in the world, does not have this capability and has no plan today to do it. So this is something that I think Europe should really reflect. I see a picture here on the wall about an astronaut on the moon. I hope this is a European boot and a European astronaut flying with the European capsule and the European rocket there, because this is something that we should discuss. And I really hope, and Timo was mentioning at the Space Summit organized, prepared by President Macron this year, is one momentum in this. And on ESA's side, we plan an extraordinary ESA Ministerial Council in 27, not for funding, but for orientation on the exploration domain. And then obviously it leads to our ministerial in 28 and the Commission's EU MFF funding next year. So I do not want to preempt anything, but I think what we should do is should really have ambition that Europe needs that. And we need it just more than just for the technology that we develop, because there's so much cross-fertilization in so many domains, not only security defense, which is mentioned quite often, but really across the board, which is really benefiting. So yes, we need to be ambitious, to be bold, to have a vision, and to really do that. I'm not saying that the moon is the only thing we should do. We should still, and of course, protect our climate and our planet with many things we do. I think ERS for me and EUGS is fundamental for Europe. That proves also how serious we are about doing it differently and faster and for security of our people and our citizens. We have got the money, but now we really have to start deploying with industry in a different way than we have done in the past. There's so much to do. This is really going hand in hand with the Commission. Thank you once more, Timo, and your teams for an incredible work you're doing together with us to make this a reality. There's so much to do. Thank you. There's so much to do. And as I said a bit in my opening speech, I think we should not be shy. We should build up constellations of thousands of satellites, and not only 10 or 50 or 100 satellites, because we can do it. We have the excellence, and sometimes Europe should just not be too timid and too, I would say, noble, not telling or showing what we can do. We are excellent. Our industry is incredibly good. I mean, we see here some of the representatives, and probably hundreds in the room and thousands out there. This is one of the best industry in the world, which we have here in Europe. Use it, and I would say we have to give it a frame to, and of course the framework and the funding to let you run and let you succeed. But there's really so much to do. I'm very upbeat. I think this is something where a lot is to be done, but it requires, as I say, every single one. We are just a small player in this, but it needs everyone to really move forward boldly and strongly together.
Let's go. I like it. Rodrigo, let's talk about the impact you were talking about earlier of how things are existing now. But what's going to happen in the next 10 years? How are those impacts and services going to change?
Thank you. It's a very good question, actually. I mean, I bring the point of view of an operator, a service provider, user-oriented. And there, yes, it's not only the next 10 years, but it's also how we get there and what we are delivering today, what we will be delivering tomorrow, all the way towards the future. And there, for us, there are a couple of elements that are key. We see the growing importance of space data and space services. This is a reality for our citizens in many different business domains, many different economic applications. Space as an engine for growth, an engine for competitiveness. And there clearly what the users are asking us, they are asking us, first of all, for service continuity, of course. They are asking us for performance. They are asking us for reliability. They are asking us for services and data on which they can count, on which they can build their business models. And by the way, this is very much related to the security of our space assets. Today, if you want, one of the biggest threats that we have to our space assets, to our space activities, is the security domain, first and foremost, the cyber security, but not only that. And then, of course, they are looking for an environment that is evolving, so where the service needs, where what the users can do with the signal and the data that we provide to them, how those user needs are evolving and will evolve. Because today, we are looking at applications very concretely that maybe a couple of years ago they were actually science fiction. They were dreams. They were something far away. And I think this evolution and this continuous focus on the user needs is important, and I think we keep it. We do something regularly. We did the last one end of last year, our user consultation platform, where we talk to users in very different sectors, and we try to listen and understand what are you looking for. How can space help you? How can space help you this year, next year, and in the next 10 years? And we see a trend that shows an increased willingness. I mean, when we started a few years ago on this business, space was for many of these users something distant, something complicated, something far away. Today it's not anymore, and I think this is positive. This is giving impulse to the service provision. Then the other thing, and I will focus on that very briefly, is how do we do that? Because we have challenges ahead. We have new things that we want to do. Right now, I mean, we are primarily working with 3 models, and with these 3 models, I think we have demonstrated that at union level, we can be flexible. We have, of course, the full property constellations. Here, the good example, it's an example, is of course Galileo. Galileo EU-owned, EU-built, we operate it, and this is of course one solution. But it's not the only one. With IRIS², we are working on the public-private partnership. Commission is leading. We are helping together with ISA. And from our perspective as USPA there, we are very much looking at the governmental service provision. So when we are going to provide that particular set of services, which are actually, if you want, the institutional part of it. And then we have another model with which we are working already today, which is the pooling and sharing model. The pooling and sharing is also a very good model. By the way, there are capacities out there. And for example, when I look at GovSatcom, it's exactly that. It's a union-built platform on which we are using capacities of member states, of a few of them, a handful of them, to provide services and capabilities for 27. Now, these 3 models can be used also to tackle the challenges of the future, be it the growth that we will have, of course, IRIS² I've mentioned, but more ambition on SSA, more ambition on the union involvement on access to space, more ambition on space commercialization. EOGS was mentioned as well before. So we have models, we have the flexibility to use those models, and we have the partnership with industry. And I think with that, we will have the solutions to provide also the services of the future.
I'm going to jump around a little bit. I'm going to come down to you, Jesus, actually. I'll go to Jesus first, and then I'll come back to you. I want to talk about supply chains, because the space sector is also reliant on what's going on Earth. It's not only based it's not a sort of closed bubble. Can you talk to us about what's happening with you and GMV and what your priorities are? The microphone is on the table.
So thank you. Well, for us, competitiveness is very, very important, and for a company like us, the ecosystem is fundamental. In the European space sector, we have today a quite healthy ecosystem consisting of companies from different size, startups, SMEs, medium-sized, mid-caps, and LSIs. And as Marco said, this ecosystem is evolving. In any case, this is, from our point of view, is very important in order to find collaborations and partnerships in order to try to construct or to aim the most competitive solution for the customers. For us, the relevance of the ecosystem is that it has to be diverse, and this is very important. And there have to be competitiveness in every level, and there might be competition at every level. So for the future, for the next decade, I think it is very important maintain this ecosystem. If we went to a huge consolidation, let's assume 75% of the market share and 7 times larger than the second player, the result might be that the competitiveness will be reduced and the competition at first level might be reduced or even cancelled. So, and furthermore, there might be no need or a reduced need for some players in collaboration. And this, all in all, this might harm and jeopardize the competitiveness of Europe. So for the title of this session, Competitiveness and Readiness, next decade, I think this issue of the ecosystem is a key issue, not only for a company like GMV, but for the competitiveness of the whole ecosystem.
Thank you. Hervé, I'll come to you. How can the space programs sort of be used or sort of utilized in order to create this ambition that we've been talking about, sort of ride the wave for companies like yours?
Yeah, the space programs are obviously, let's say, fundamental in meeting that ambition. I'm glad to hear, by the way, from Josef that he says he believes that the space industry in Europe is strong and basically can do it. I clearly believe that we can do it, and we have proven it in the past. You take a program like Galileo, it's a program that costs 4 times less than GPS and the US GPS, and at the same time provides a better performance. So 3 times, okay, maybe not 4, 3 times, all right. 3 times better, yeah, okay. So that's a good evidence. Now, what are the let's say key enablers to make it happen? I think it's important on one side that we try to simplify, reduce the bureaucracy, as you said, Joseph, before. One of the key elements, by the way, is our standards and referentials. We should keep on improving and simplifying these standards and referentials. This will get us, let's say, more competitive and cheaper. Another strategic enabler is definitively the alignment between ESA and European Commission, which is something we have now, and having a full consistency at program level between ESA preparing the technologies and, let's say, the full launch of the programs at European Commission level. That's really a strategic enabler. And by doing so, I think we can succeed in all the domain of the space shield. Navigation, I talked about Galileo second generation, of course, but LEO PNT is coming up. It's getting prepared with, let's say, the demonstrator programs that we have at ESA, and we'll have to go very quickly at full scale in the upcoming MFF. Observation, obviously, we have our flagship program, Copernicus, but here also preparing EOGS is definitively something that has to be done with the ERS observation, and we are obviously getting ready for that. And the good news here is that I think industry is ready. Industry has off-the-shelf solutions that are already first element that can be contributed. Connectivity, we talked a lot about RE2. Of course, RE2 is challenged in a way in these days, but RE2 is going to be a very strong flagship, very important for the future of Europe, for the autonomy of Europe in terms of connectivity. And by the way, we should not only focus at broadband connectivity, but also look at direct-to-device. Connectivity to mobile, we forget a bit about it, and as a matter of fact, as I said before, SpaceX is taking very bold moves in that domain. They just acquired frequencies from EcoStar, as you know, and therefore they basically are willing to compete with mobile operators. There is, by the way, a very key decision to be taken in the near future, which is the S-band allocation, the mobile frequencies for this kind of application. And here Europe will have to safeguard, let's say, sovereign activities in that field. And finally, to complete the picture, there are other sets of capabilities to have the full space shield, including actioning space, including space situation awareness, and including early warning, in which here also industry can provide solutions, by the way, taking benefit of the duality of space, because in all these domains, we have built up capacities in the civil domain that can apply to the let's say, defense requirements. So we can do it and move on.
We can do it. Massimo, let me come down to you about supply chains. What's the most important ways to ensure or support industrial capacity? I know that's a priority to you, as it was with Jesus.
I think that the supply chain is essential, is a fundamental. We had as well in the past few years in the frame of the European Space Agency, let's say, the work how to involve, let's say, small, medium enterprises in the large project and give the best contribution to what we call the large-scale integrator. I don't think that we can address the challenge that we have in terms of the ramp up of the capacity without really a common work. I don't think that it's the scheme of subcontracting. It's a scheme of partnership, and of course it means that we need to share what are the technical objectives, the programmatic objective of those flagship programs with the community, with the ecosystem. So just bouncing what Joseph said, I think that we need to be, first of all, self-aware, self-consciousness that we have a strong ecosystem. It's an ecosystem where we have different actors, players, and each of them may have a fundamental role. It's not a question of how big is the company. But if you have a key technology, if you specialize a key technology, and if we build the condition to scale up that capacity in Europe, you can be also 100-person company and be fundamental. Another element I think is essential is the federation of the capabilities. As been mentioned before, of course, I'm glad of that. Under the Italian recovery plan, we launched a number of space factories, not one. Of course, I know very well one of them. But it's the concept of the federation, it's the concept to have infrastructure cooperating also among different companies. And I think this is essential, and it's essential to share that at industrial, at institutional level. So I really think that if I should give a key word to the today's conference, we cannot respond to those challenges if we are not able to have the full ecosystem bringing the results. And in this respect, the supply chain is essential, is fundamental from a technical, from industrial, and also from competitive standpoint. We know that if we want to build the 1,000 satellites that Joseph mentioned, the cost of the single satellite must go down, but must go down in a reasonable, profitable industry. So we need to work on it, not only on the TRL, but also on the manufacturing readiness level and in the mass scale production level.
Yeah.
And I think it's an important challenge, which is well ahead of the space sector. I think that may involve a number of topics, Timo, that Europe is working on.
And all plays into the sovereignty issue. Joseph, yeah, just a quick comment.
Very quick, because I think there's something that has not yet been directly addressed, but we talk a lot about funding, EU funding, ESA funding, member state funding, and so on. But one source we should really tap into is private funding. Private funding from investors, venture capital companies, and so on. I know it's happening, and we are also playing a very active role. But actually, what I would suggest is that we define one of these ambitions, maybe comes out of the Space Summit hosted by President Macron, and then really call on investors and organize, I would call it an investors conference, where we say, look, this is the ambition we have. We know that there's private business interests and business models that will succeed medium to long term, and really call on investors to co-invest together with obviously public funds, where we set the frame, ensure the long-term stability and guarantee, but I think private money needs to be much more to flow into, and this is something we should really also work together, Timo and ourselves, and obviously with many others, but I think very important.
Feels like the moment as well. You know, we're talking about boom, additional money, get investing. Marco, I want to come to you. One of the things that we, I think even if you look at the program this year compared to previous years, this defense and security angle of space, which has just grown and grown and grown. How do you as a company view your role within that and your balance between projects in defense and security and traditional space sort of projects and space applications?
Yes. Well, historically, of course, OHB started its first system work in the defense area, Salupe, before we then focused over many years on especially ESA programs. So currently, of course, for us, ESA and EU is a big part. But this will now change. Of course, if Germany spends all this money, this will change our portfolio, and I guess that's good. I don't know exactly what that means in terms of numbers. Many of those programs that are now anticipated have not really been initiated, but I guess what we will see is a massive shift in this regard, and we are preparing ourselves for that. And at the end, it means growth, because we need to obviously continue also our space agency work. I see a cultural difference between military and space agency customers, very different. ESA is a very sophisticated customer. Technology is very well understood, and it's more like a partnership. Whereas in defense, it's really like a customer relation. So you have to perform a result, and obviously there's much less understanding and much less also willingness to deal with the difficulties of space. I mean, obviously, in all these countries that are doing space in the beginning, space agencies helped industry to get started and to develop capabilities. And again, what I foresee for Europe at large, but especially in Germany, is a massive focus on military work to come. So I hope it's not fully competing in terms of resources, but I think that we will see a very different makeup of the industry sometime. You see big defense companies entering space in Germany and other countries. You will see the same, and that's what's going on in the next couple of years.
Yeah, that kind of cross-pollination across many industries that are coming in and moving across. Alain, I'll just come down to you. Let's talk about this, the realistic capability to build scale and also to reduce the inefficiencies and the double-ups. We heard actually from the directors of the space agencies this need to not be duplicating everything. But for companies, if it's competitive and if it's selling, then a duplication isn't always the end of the world. How do you think about it in Airbus?
If we compare with the US, Josef mentioned previously the investor capability in the US and the gap that we have. But when we compare the governmental spending in the US, it's 5 times or more higher than the one in Europe. Second, when we talk about the large-scale integrator, we have the same number of players in Europe and in the US. So budget is different, same number of players. And on top, we are fragmented in terms of project and demand. So I think if we want to be competitive, and this is valid for the full supply chain, we need to have an harmonization of the demand to avoid to do several times the same type of things. and as well the consolidation in the supply to be at scale and to be with the right volume. I think it's a condition to be competitive. It's true for the large-scale integrator. It's true the volume, the predictability, and some visibility as well to be able to invest. It's true as well for the supply chain. So yes, at scale with the volume to avoid the fragmentation and the inefficiencies that you mentioned.
Yeah, this is the priority. And Jean-Marie, I'll come to you for a final word on this panel. We've made technical sovereignty and resilience a clear priority for a while now as well. But obviously, the question is, what are the most critical actions to protect and build that technical sovereignty? What are your priorities there?
We have seen sovereignty at the system level. We wanted to operate our own GNSS constellation. We were right making this kind of decision 20 years ago. When it comes now to the very present conditions, which were totally unexpected, I think we need to make sure that all technology which is on board our system are not depending on another nation. So we have to list the bill of material and making sure that everything, we have a firm grip with our European industry. I think it's something essential now. In this respect, there are still some concern in the domain we are operating with EEE components. We are still very much depending on the American industry for some electronics, which could be a real problem because you can't imagine what will happen tomorrow. So, and then I believe it's the equipment, the supply chain, as mentioned by Alain, needs to get organized, probably to do some consolidation exercise, and then try to really mature the technology so that the mission critical could use them without being hindered by hiccup because not enough, the level of the TRL is not at the right level. And also making sure that all these blocks of technology are looking very similar to one mission to another, and then we'll save a lot of energy and time and money while doing that. So I think here it's one of the vision to start shaping commercial of the shelf standard. And as mentioned loudly this morning, be prepared to two approaches which should get along is incremental approach. The day I have a new feature, I don't need to reinvent. I need to upgrade what I have. And the other word, which was in technology that could be operated throughout different systems in interoperability. And I think that are the two main drivers if we'd like to be successful in the future, at least as I see it at the very moment.
Thank you so much. Okay, let's wrap up the panel there. Real broad swings across the industry and from the institutions as well. We're very grateful that you all came and joined us on the panel this morning. A lot of the topics that we've touched on here are going to be delved into in different panels across the next 2 days. So please look at the program. For the people that are in the room here, there's going to be a session that takes over straight away. So if you're leaving or entering, please move quickly and take your seat so that the next panel can get moving. But in the meantime, a huge round of applause for all of the panelists. Thank you so much. Thank you very much indeed.